applications, internships, and career exploration. And perhaps most notably for us tonight, she's one of our own, a proud CMFD alum and John Adams High School graduate. Congresswoman Brown understands the power of education and empowerment of our students. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Congresswoman Shontel Brown.
Labor of every strength hear about tonight. And you can see it on the screen behind you. These are your priorities, your concerns, your questions. And we're going to tackle as many of them as we can. Now, I can't possibly get to them all, but please know my office is available and accessible, and our phones are on, and we actually answer them. I will also continue to host regular town halls across this district because I always want to hear from you. So, let's get to work. Now, before I really get into it, I must acknowledge some folks in addition to CMSD. I also want to thank our incredible OH11 Youth Advisory Council students, Lindea and Jada, for leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And the amazing singers from the Cleveland School of Arts for your money. We're talking IRS refunds, VA benefits, Medicare, Social Security, back into the hands of the constituents. And when a lot of people in Congress turned off their phones and closed their doors during the longest government shutdown in history, we kept the phones on and our doors open. how we closed over 970 constituent cases last year, delivered 319 commendations and resolutions, and a combination of 15 signature events like town halls, expos, and benefits meetings. And altogether, we had 423 constituent events and meetings. And in 2025, y'all had a lot to say. That's right. Last year, we responded to over 167,000 constituent calls, letters, and emails. We also set up a portal on our website to gather your stories, and I was honored and humbled to meet with so many of you and to carry your voice back to Washington with me. And including the healthcare fight, a fight that is not over, when I stood alongside constituents who shared the painful reality of what Trump's healthcare cuts meant for them. That brings me to one of the biggest challenges we face. Trump's big, ugly law. A big, bad, ugly budget deal for Northeast Ohio. Now, I have had the honor of representing you in Congress since 2021, and I can honestly say this is the worst bill I have ever seen. And if you know some of the people I work alongside, that's really saying a lot. This was Trump's baby last year. You know, he called it his one big bill. But I like to call it the big ugly law, which you can abbreviate to bull, because it's a bunch of because now it is truly the worst law I've ever seen, and this was pretty much all the Republicans and the majority in Congress talked about and worked on last year. And if you notice, it's basically the sole legislative idea that they had, the only one. But the irony is this: the bill is so bad. How bad is it? They don't even talk about it anymore because it's indefensible. And every person in our district needs to know exactly what the big ugly law actually did. So, it cut costs. Trump and congressional Republicans made the largest cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act in our history. They cut SNAP food benefits, cut student loans, cut federal programs that keep your energy costs low, and blew up the national debt. And why did they do this? Well, I'm glad you asked. All to give tax cuts to the rich and provide ICE with a $75 billion slush fund. That's right. Republicans lit the social safety net on fire to keep the country club warm and to fuel the violence and terror we witnessed from ICE over the past year. And the impact of those cuts is very real. They cut over $1.1 trillion from Medicaid, the ACA, and Medicare overall. Here in Ohio, that will mean over 480,000 people lose their health care. In our district, 43,000 people will lose their coverage. 43,000 people. Let that sink in. And all those cuts impact everyone else, even if you don't rely on Medicaid. As we are already seeing, insurance premiums are going up. Co-pays are up. And when people stop going to the doctor, and when the Medicaid payments stop for providers, there will be longer wait times, hospital closures, and a loss of services. So this is going to hurt all of us. Now, let's talk about food. Trump's big ugly law cuts $186 billion from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. And between their cuts and the new eligibility requirements they've added, which are designed to keep people off the program, we expect 98,000 Ohioans to lose SNAP benefits. Benefits that will also get smaller, dropping by an average of $100 But here's the truth. Our district has the highest percentage of people relying on SNAP in the state. 1 in 5 households in our district need those benefits, including 1 in 3 Black households. So this is going to be a disaster for economically vulnerable people. New, terrible work requirements, or as I call them, paperwork requirements, are already rolling out, impacting veterans, those experiencing homelessness, and people aged 55 to 64. As the second highest ranking Democrat on the Agriculture Committee, I led the charge on stripping this provision out of the big ugly law last year. But unfortunately, we did not have the votes to kill it. But soon, I will be leading the primary Democratic bill to repeal these terrible cuts that take food away from urban families. And we're going to keep fighting to repeal these cuts throughout this Congress. I can guarantee that. And look, all of these cuts are pushing costs up. ACA premiums are increasing on average $700 a year. Energy costs are increasing by over $400 a year because Trump is killing all the new clean energy projects, tens of millions of dollars worth of projects that were canceled in our district alone. Student loan burdens increasing by $1,200 a year because they're cutting and consolidating all the programs. And don't forget that this all comes on top of Trump's reckless tariffs. Let's be clear. Tariffs are a tax on you. You pay it when you buy your goods, gas, and groceries. Trump's tariffs are expected to cost the average American household over $2,500 this year. So it's not your imagination. I know life feels more and more unaffordable. That's because it is. And here's what we need to do. Repeal the big ugly law which is driving up our costs for food, healthcare, and utilities. We also need to repeal the president's tariffs which are making everything from coffee and meat to electronics and clothing more expensive. Now, as I mentioned, the big ugly law cut all these programs to pay for what? Well, I'm glad you asked. They did it to give tax cuts for the richest Americans. Now, do I have any millionaires or billionaires today? Because if so, this bill was written for you. The new law gave the richest 0.1%, not 1%, 0.1%, a $300,000 a year tax cut. We're talking about people making more than $4 million per year, which amounts to this. They get rich, and the rest of us get stuck with the bill. And what's worse, with all the huge cuts, this law still added $3.3 trillion to the national debt, which will continue to drive up inflation. Now, you don't have to be Dionne Warwick's psychic friend to predict years down the road that the debt incurred today will make it harder for us to pay for what we need tomorrow, which of course is what they want. Because nobody knows more about moral and financial bankruptcy than Donald J. Trump. And last but not least, the big ugly law gave ICE a $75 billion slush funds for deportations and detention centers. $75 billion. Let me put that in perspective. Last year's ICE annual budget was $10 billion. So they got 7 times that amount in one bill. And what did ICE do with that money? I think you already know.
Killing
ICE went on a hiring spree. 12,000 agents hired in mere months. 12,000 hired in mere months. With signing bonuses north of $20,000.
Still not good.
Again, at a time when we also told people that health care and food cuts were necessary. This is an agency with minimum oversight, minimum background checks, and minimum training. And they're pushed further and further to the extreme by a poor excuse for a president telling them to feed his mass deportation machine. So the images, videos, and news out of Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, and even here in Cleveland Heights are shocking. But it should not be surprising. And you should know I have vowed to use every tool that I have to disarm and dismantle ICE. Since Trump took office, our district has been attacked from every side by federal funding cuts and freezes. Y'all remember Elon Musk and Doge? Here's how our district was impacted. $156 million in Solar for All grants terminated. $129 million in clean energy grants for Cleveland and Cuyahoga County frozen. $20 million in Gear Up funding for college readiness programs at local high schools eliminated. Hurting students at dozens of schools across Cuyahoga County because they believe helping students like those who helped kick off this program and saved me while I was traveling, they consider them government waste. The Trump administration also eliminated funding for Metro Health's asthma prevention program, ended a grant for the Cleveland Peacemakers Alliance, froze funding for the Solar for Schools program, and canceled all funding for MAC, a gold standard incubator supporting local manufacturing. And on top of that, because their war on reproductive rights, our Planned Parenthood in Cleveland closed because of the loss of federal funds. So please be clear, this is comprehensive and calculated. It is systematic and systemic. It is intentional and institutional. And this has absolutely nothing to do with fiscal responsibility. If anything, it's a reverse Robin Hood scheme because it was always about cutting programs that benefit the people to enrich the powerful. Doge was a complete and total failure. They promised to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. Well, Doge was a waste, Elon was a fraud, and all he accomplished was abusing the American people. The fact of the matter is, government spending actually increased in 2025. Now, some of us actually care about addressing waste, fraud, and abuse. I happen to be one of those people, and that's why I'm proud to report that my bill to cut wasteful software spending at the federal level, a bill that would save taxpayers $5 billion annually, passed the House in December. And that brings me to another crucial point. Look, it's been a long year with the Republicans in total control of Washington. But I will fight any way I can to get wins for this district in any way that I can. And some of you might be wondering, what exactly does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. Sometimes it means using my voice and my vote to stand up to this administration. It means voting no on funding ICE. It means working with House Democrats to repeal these horrible cuts, save Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act, and forcing this MAGA majority to be held accountable. It means introducing legislation to codify anti-discrimination protections after Trump's administration rolled back civil rights era protections. It means launching investigations through the Oversight Committee on Trump's corruption or ISIS abuse. And I'm proud to say, House Democrats have been able to use our leverage to secure wins despite being in the minority. That's how we're able to force Trump to release that Epstein files. It's how we were able to force votes on extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. It's also how we were able to restore funding for Cleveland Job Corps so local students could get an education just weeks. And just weeks after Trump tried to end the program and kick the students to the curb, I was truly honored to be there to help celebrate their graduation. And it's how we rejected the massive presidential proposal that cuts everything from NASA Glenn and veteran health care to Head Start and education funding. But finding wins also means working in a bipartisan manner. If it will benefit our district, I will do that. In the last month, after years of my work behind the scenes, my office was able to secure $12.5 million in federal funding for 14 local projects. $12.5 million is coming back to Northeast Ohio. Take a look at what we were able to accomplish. This is funding for local road, rail, and water infrastructure projects on the east side and the west side. It's funding for local parks, funding for Midtown, Irishtown, Bend, and multiple lakefront projects. Big initiatives, y'all, that will help us work with the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County to transform our community. We also secured funding for social services at Banking Center, new public safety funding for the city and county, funding for education for people in re-entry, and funding for housing and economic development on Cleveland's east side. And if these slides have been hard to read, don't worry. You can find them all in your State of the District book that you should have picked up at the door. So I also want to highlight something that I'm especially proud of. And it's very fitting during Black History Month. Happy Black History Month, y'all. At a time when this president wants to roll back the clock and pursue a resegregation agenda, we are not erasing Black history in this district. We are honoring it. My office led bipartisan legislation joined by nearly every Republican in Ohio's delegation to recognize a Cleveland hero, Tech Sergeant Alma Gladys Winter. She served in World War II as part of the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion, the first and only all-Black Women's Army Corps unit deployed overseas. If you don't know the story, they were sent to Europe to clear more than 17 million pieces of delayed mail connecting troops to their families. They were given 6 months to do it. They finished in less than 3. Their service was extraordinary, and for too long, it has been overlooked. And with the support of the Minter family, I introduced legislation to rename the Collinville Post Office on East 152nd Street in her honor. The bill passed the Oversight Committee. And I'm pushing to get it signed into law because honoring Black history isn't political, it's patriotic, and it's long overdue. And in a few moments, we're going to honor some additional history as well. But as we think about the weeks and months to come, I know being challenged every day, and the stakes are incredibly high. When a family loses health care, that's an emergency. When a mom loses SNAP benefits because of paperwork requirements, that's a crisis. When people are afraid to go to church or to speak their native language because of a racist White House, that's a spiritual wound we should all feel. And here's the cold hard truth. The White House isn't losing any sleep over the damage they've done. In fact, they think it's good because the cruelty isn't. And hypocrisy and shamelessness is their superpower. And I mean it, they are absolutely shameless. Like destroying the White House to build a ballroom for rich donors. And slapping Trump's name on the Kennedy Center.
Dirty.
Time and time again, this administration has done things that are illogical, illegal, and immoral. And nowhere has that been more visible than in their immigration agenda, which has turned our cities into war zones, seeing hundreds of people wrongfully detained and deported, an agenda that has seen over 30 immigrants die in ICE detention centers and left 2 American citizens shot and killed on the streets in broad daylight. This has been a moment of truth for our country. I think about what's happened in Minneapolis. We've all seen what's happened with our own eyes. This is a time when we're all being challenged. It's about what side are you on? When you see someone being abused like Alice Pretty did, what side of the sidewalk are you on? Because that will determine what side of history you will be on. And that's why I love the people of this city. Because for the past year, you've been right there. And whether it was Elon, Doge, or ICE, or Trump's cruel bills, you've spoken out. When the weeks grow hard, and when the weight feels heavy, and when doubt grows, don't underestimate yourself because you can make a difference. Make sure that our values held true. Even under the most intense pressure, even under political attack, even when it would have been easier to stay silent.